I'm delighted to say, and another appearance in all his finery from Leigh Curtis of the Nottingham Post. Leigh, delighted to have you on board. Know you're a busy man today, so we'll crack on with the show. Delighted to have you on board again.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. Hope you're all okay.
Yeah. Do you like this shirt? This is long before your time covering Notts County. I look like one of them paint pot testing pots, don't I, for do-looks? But this was one of our more colourful away creations.
It's a nice kit. I like the heart one in the background as well. The blue one's nice
that was
as well.
Another cult one. Yeah, they were kind of back to back. That early 1990s. Much more conservative these days. But the most important news at the top of the show, because there's lots of it tonight, isn't there? We'll be talking Elisha Sam. FIFA have taken notice of it. My friends at the MLS, it's gone all across east to west coast of America. The MLS guys have been ringing me about that wonder goal. He might get a move to the MLS now. You never know, do you? Possible new loan signings because of injuries. You've been at the press conference today. Lots coming out of that. FA Trophy draw, home one against Hornchurch. We've got a bit of a tribute to Glenn Roeder, who sadly passed away. But let's start top of the show. We're playing Tuesday night against Kings Lynn. It's been a bit like Coronation Street, this saga, hasn't it? But, well, according to Ollie Bayliss, who's normally right on most of these things, Kings Lynn are going to be playing the next 2 matches.
Yes, that's right. I mean, we asked in the press conference today whether the game was going to go ahead on Tuesday night, and Neil was very matter of fact about it, and basically said that he'd not been told that it wasn't going to go ahead. So obviously Kings Lynn are going to play the next 2 games. They've said they're going to struggle to see out the season, but I think it's good for the league that they're still continuing and still continuing and trying to get by as best they can. Obviously, we've seen what's happened with Dover. I mean, they've refused point blank now, haven't they? That's their season finished. So we'll wait to see what happens in their season. But yeah, it's great for Notts County to have a game tomorrow night, because obviously they're riding high on the back of Saturday's performance. Great turnaround, and obviously it's all about the league now, trying to get up there and trying to catch Torquay United.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding, as best I can piece this together, I mean, I think Dover, Jim Parmenter, the owner and the chairman down there, I think he's dead set. He's not playing another game. He's not playing another game. Dover are done. I get the impression from Stephen Cleeve that he's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. I think left to his own volition, then they wouldn't play on. But I think he is a bit concerned about what the league might do. I think there is some talk of some strategic furloughing of some of their players and then keeping on with the rest of the squad. And I think sort of Kings Lynn kind of half battered it over to the players, didn't they, over the weekend, giving them some sort of options to take wage cuts or whatever. Be interesting to see whether all the players say one out, all out, or whether some will carry on and others are furloughed. But we're playing tomorrow. What sort of group of players are we going to be having out there tomorrow? Because there clearly is no Ben Turner, who suffered a reoccurrence of the calf injury in the warm-up on Saturday. Neil spoke about his desire to get some more loan players in, but not so kind of already, and you'll be able to tell us this, at more or less an optimum ceiling for the maximum number of loan players you can have at any one time. So where are we with that?
Right, so Ben Turner obviously injured his calf in the warm-up on Saturday. He was actually being considered to play against Stockport last Tuesday, but Neil decided against it and went with Connell and Alex. So Ben looks like he's going to be out for anything up to from 2 to 4 weeks. The same is the case with Tyler Golden. So, of course...
It's the opportunity for Notts to be able to send Tyler back, or are we committed to funding effectively the loan for a month?
I think you can't send anybody back in the first month, can you? I don't think you can do that. That's in the rules. So that leaves Notts short, because obviously he was brought in to cover for Richard Brunley, and obviously that only leaves Dion Kelly-Evans as the only natural right back at the club. And obviously Ben's injury leaves just Connell and Alex as the centre-back partnership. Now we all know against Stockport last Tuesday. Connell injured his knee, and of course was then forced into action on Saturday against Oxford City. So in terms of where Notts stand in respect of loan signings, yes, they've got 5 at the moment, but you can exceed that number. You can only have 5 in your match day squad.
Right, okay.
But with Tyler Golden injured, he's one of them anyway. So effectively, Notts, if they brought another 2 in on loan, for instance, you'd take Tyler out of that. So who would come in to replace him would be the 5th one, and then the centre half would be number 6. So that's where we're at the moment. I know they were busy at the weekend. Neil spoke to the sporting director, head of recruitment, Richard Montague, on Saturday. They've been going through the new signings, who they potentially might come in. Personally, I think they should go for someone with a bit of experience. I think not really another youngster. If it can't, if they can find one with experience at this stage of the season, because I think it's such a crucial period. I think you need somebody in there with that sort of knowledge and know-how, and is perhaps used to playing in such a hectic schedule in such a short space of time. And that's where we're at really at the moment. So we'll just wait and see what transpires. I would expect there to be some movement this week.
And from what you're saying there, it would appear that the funding is in place, so the owners are clearly prepared to release funds to support these loans, correct?
Yes, I mean that's one thing that's great about the owners. I think whenever Neil has a problem, or let's be honest, there's been a few this season. Callum Roberts, the striker situation when Wes Thomas, whatever Neil wants. He goes to the Richard Montague and then goes back, then it feeds back to the owners, and they sit down, they go ahead with it. They back their manager superbly. It's now all a question about the kind of quality that Notts can get in, because a lot of league teams are obviously at crucial stages of the season. So are they going to be wanting to let players go? And if you're looking at the Conference North, Conference South, and bring players in, do you bring somebody in on a short-term deal? But then the question remains, are they going to be good enough? So I think there's a lot of thinking, and I know Greg Abbott was on the phone on Sunday asking around to see which players were available. So it'll be interesting to see who they bring in, because as we all know, I've looked at the schedule, it's crammed, isn't it? All the way up until the semi-final of the FA Trophy on March the 27th. I think they play something like 6 games between now and then. So, the squad really is going to be pushed to its limits. Neil was very forthright in talking about Connell and Alex, saying, look, I cannot play the same team every week. I just can't. With the amount of games we've got playing, we've got to play. These players have already played so many games in such a short space of time. They do need a rest. They are going to need to be given a little bit of time to recuperate, because their bodies are being pushed to the absolute limit. So it's going to be a really test of Neil's squad rotation, and it's going to be a real test of the club's recruitment. Yeah,
I mean, I think the whole rotation's an interesting point. I had a quick look at some stats before tonight. Notts have played 21 games, and we'll just consider league games here, not the cup. So 7 players have played 17 or more of those 21 games.
Yeah.
Michael Doyle would be a benchmark. He's clearly the most senior. It's a polite way of saying the oldest. But he's played every one of those 21 games.
Yeah.
Yeah. And clearly he has phenomenal fitness for a 39-year-old. But a lot of those younger players, if a 39-year-old can play every minute of every game so far this season, there is an argument that other players can too, who are significantly younger.
It's a fair point. But of course, you've got to remember that those positions that we're talking about, the centre half positions, Notts do have cover in the centre of midfield. They don't have cover at centre half. So they couldn't, theoretically, if we look at Conor Rawlinson, for instance, he is by far, for me, the best player of the season. Absolutely 100 miles clear. Alex Lacey's been just as good, but in those centre-back positions, they're one tackle away, they're one muscle injury away from getting seriously injured. So you don't want that at the key stages. So why would you risk it? You don't want to risk when you're chasing promotion and you're potentially chasing a day out at Wembley. Why would you take the risk of keep playing them until they break when you can just perhaps replace them for one game, give them the 90-minute rest that they need, give them a little bit of a break, and then you rotate again and they come back into the side again. With Michael, he's a bit of a freak actually in terms of he never gets injured. He never gets injured, and I don't think there's ever going to be a position where a manager ever drops his captain for a league game just for the sake of it. So I imagine that Michael was probably the first name on Neil's team sheet regardless. But in those positions, you've got Matty Wolf, you've got Jim O'Brien who can fit in there. You can fit obviously Jake Reeves is in there as well. So you've got 4 players vying for those. But I do think the centre halves in a position where your body is always being put on the line, isn't it? You've being asked to defend constantly. It does make sense for them sort of players to be rested as and when the time arises, I think.
Well, time will tell. Time will tell. We've got plenty of questions and observations coming in. Let's whiz through a few of those. K. Oliver Ramsden, would Pierce Bird be an option? Hasn't he moved somewhere fairly recently?
I think, if I remember rightly, he's back at Eastleigh now, isn't he? Because he went on loan to Boston United, and obviously Boston United's season's now ended. So
that's probably Kay's point. I mean, would he come into consideration, do you think, or not? They're doing well at the minute, aren't they, Eastleigh as well?
Yeah, no, that wouldn't happen.
Okay, there you go, Kay. There's an unequivocal answer. Often Leigh dances around the houses, but that's a pretty unequivocal.
Yeah, that definitely won't happen.
Your hair has obviously caused the usual merriment and mirth. Neil Holmes, whip round for a set of hair clippers for Leigh.
I did read today one very, very funny comment and said that I didn't need a hairdresser, I needed a groundsman.
Andrew Webb, first time I've seen Leigh Curtis for a while, and I've got to say that's some phenomenal hair growth.
Yeah, lockdown hasn't been kind.
Our Canadian branch,
the Duska.
They're up, the Duska. Kevin J.S. Duska Jr. I keep saying it because it's such a great name, isn't it?
It is a great name.
He likes the kit. We'll see if we can muster one up. They're pretty rare now. Right. Let's just go back again to Saturday. James Spring, top of the show, was straight in there. Neil's change of shape at halftime on Saturday worked a treat. We'll never have a better chance to make a Wembley final, but it's meant to be the 8th of May. So unfortunately, chances are it'll be no fans again. We're clearly not going to be tempting fate. We're clearly not. Hornchurch in the next round. Whoever gets to the final of the trophy, is it remote that fans would be allowed into this fixture as it stands?
Well, if you remember rightly, the final last year was postponed because the FA wanted to hold a non-league day, didn't they, to get the fans in?
That's right.
So they were going to play the Vars and I think that the FA Trophy on the same day, so one after the other. I wonder whether that final might get postponed and pushed back. I do wonder that because, listen, it's been such a tough year for non-league football in general, and tough for Notts fans, Hornchurch fans, whoever, Boston United, York, everybody. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I think if I could send a message to the FA and say, look, these fans have been through everything this year in terms of the sacrifices they've had to make during the pandemic. Why not push it back to later on in May or even early June, depending if, the dates are available and the clubs are happy with it, just to be able to get the fans in through the door. I mean, they did discuss it last year, and that's why the Harrogate final didn't get played, if you remember. That game has still got to be played as well. So, why not push it back and just let the fans go and savour what is, for some of them, will be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Very much so. I think the added logistical challenge that the FA are going to face this year is that as it stands, clearly the European Championships will be taking place.
Yeah.
And it's increasingly likely that England is going to be hosting most of it, not just the semi-finals and the final. And normally with those big tournaments, UEFA or FIFA will take the stadium over several weeks in advance. So my own personal concern for this trophy final, I don't think there's going to be a lot of latitude.
Well, move it to Old Trafford.
I was about to say, exactly, if you're going to have it at Wembley, because I think 1st of June, I think Wembley's booked out for UEFA and the Euros, and it's kind of locked down then in a secure environment. So I think that your better bet would be not Wembley, but an Old Trafford, a Villa Park, or whatever the stadium would be. I think as it stands on the 8th of May, I don't see fans being in it for that, to be honest with you. No, I don't, because clearly you have the travel implications as well. Right. James Spring's got an alternative view. Read that Kings Lynn may play tomorrow. We know that they are, and Saturday. But then that's it. Why bother with these 2 games? Why should Notts risk injury for a game which might be wiped from the records by next week? I guess you've got to play, haven't you? You've got to play.
You've just got to treat it as normal, haven't you? You've just got to go and do the business. I mean, I certainly get the point. But, what happens if Kings Lynn do see out the season, we don't get up for it and we end up getting beat tomorrow night. So I think you've got to treat it as professional and as committed as you can be. I actually think, I'm not sure what kind of mindset the Kings Lynn players will be in. I think that's a crucial thing because the club's making noises that it might not see out the season. If you're a Kings Lynn player, you're going, well, if we're not bothered about seeing out the season, why should we be bothered? I know you talk about professionalism, but it's totally different, as we heard from Stephen. They're part-time
hybrid model, I think.
Full-time, it's a bit of a hybrid club, isn't it? But again, if you're making those kind of noises, if I'm a player myself, I'm thinking, well, go Notts County on a Tuesday night, the result really doesn't matter. I'll just go out, that's it. Enjoy the experience, not really bothered about the result. So I wonder from the psychological point of view, and the manager has come out and strongly said, hasn't he, why are we playing just for the sake of Torquay United or Notts County to go, which I thought was interesting. So, if you're in the dressing room, are they going to turn up? Are they going to be turning up tomorrow night fully committed, knowing that in 2 games' time their season might be over? So it'd be interesting. The psychology is really interesting.
I mean, whether I wonder whether Kings Lynn are playing a bit of a waiting game to see what happens, because Dover are a bit of a test case with the sanctions that are going to be taken against Dover for not fulfilling that. Well, they've missed a few, but they were charged, weren't they? I wonder whether they're waiting to see what sanctions are imposed on Dover for not
first before they make a decision.
And they're kind of just trying to read the tea leaves a little bit, if it's suddenly a points deduction imposed for next season or something. I wonder whether miraculously Kings Lynn then play the rest of the season. If it's 50 quid fine or something, well, there's not that much of a disincentive to carry on, is there? So, but again, that's probably the cynic in me. Chris Barker, as Oxford City's season is now over, having had a close view of them on Saturday, were there any players that could come in for Notts? Roberts looked a decent player, and the left wing back looked useful, he says.
I like Roberts, I mean, their season's over, isn't it? I think much would depend on whether they're on a full-time contract or not. If they're on full-time contract, then obviously transfer fees, etc. Part-time contracts, I think it's just a 7-day approach, I think, as far as I'm aware. So it's really interesting. I really like Roberts. I thought they were, for half an hour, they were okay. I thought Notts were absolutely abysmal in the first 45 minutes, and obviously it took Elijah Sam to score 2 incredible goals to turn the game around, and obviously Jimmy wraps it up in stoppage time. But I like Roberts. Very powerful, very quick, direct. The sort of players, and obviously he's got the last name Roberts, and the last Roberts they plucked out from the National League North and South divisions were not too shabby, was he?
Is he in contention tomorrow, Cal?
No.
He's definitely not available.
No.
From the presser today.
Yeah. Neil, having spoken about Callum and saying that he was going to be available for the Oxford City game, then he came back for the Stockport game, didn't he?
Yeah.
Ahead of schedule, and that was a bit of a surprise for everybody.
Played the last 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, he's struggling at the moment with soreness and perhaps the demands being placed upon him now. He's returning back to training, etc. So Neil didn't put a timescale back on his return. Said, because he said he'd be back for the Oxford City game, and that didn't happen. So we wait and see. It is a setback because I was really looking forward to seeing him back and fit and available again, but he's had such a nightmare season in terms of injuries. I think, you want him back fully fit. You don't want to rush him back and let him get 20, 25 minutes and then go and break down again. So it's just a very much a case of watch this space, really. But, big blow.
They're an educated lot, the followers of the Magpie Circle. We've got an observation from Kevin J.S. Duska Jr. that has the word quixotically in it. I'll read it. I'm not sure I'll understand it all, but massive moral hazard on KL's part. If they're playing well and see only to have their ties nullified, we're going to put a tired squad tomorrow for a game that might quixotically enough not count. Look, moral dilemmas. Knots have to be as professional as possible, whether you're playing 11, 18-year-olds or whether you are playing Kings Lynn's full first strength team who are bang at it. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We agree on that.
Yeah.
We've gone almost about 20 minutes without mentioning the most talked about moment of Notts County's recent history, certainly in terms of global interest. The last one I think that went quite as global as this, believe it or not. Do you remember when we had the as a 90-year-old Notts County fan who suffers from dementia?
That's right.
And
yeah.
The local nursing home had written in he went on at half time. Brilliant.
That's right.
Brilliant thing by Notts, and he scored a goal, didn't he? He kicked a ball.
Yes.
And it went in.
That's
and then
right.
they were going
brilliant.
And back at the nursing home, you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. Back at the nursing home, they would then keep replaying that video because obviously with dementia, his short-term memory isn't very good. So he could keep watching his goal on the video screen. Lovely, lovely story. That went all across America as well, because again, my contact relationships with the Major League Soccer and the NFL said, "Oh, that's an unbelievable story," and that went coast to coast in America as well.
I thought you was going to do an American accent then.
I have to when I get on the plane. It's not very good now because I've not flown over there for about 14 months. But this one, Elisha Sam, goal of whatever you want to call it, again has gone coast to coast. It's about 4 million views. FIFA have put something out today, haven't they? I mean, yeah, one or two of our wise sages in the press box were all for hooking Eli Sam at half time, weren't they?
Well, it wasn't quite hooking, but I think if you recall that first half, I mean, if somebody had told me at half time I was about to see the goal of one of the greatest goals scored at Meadow Lane in its entire history, I would have said you were mad based on that first half performance, because there were so many shocking individual displays. And that left-hand side, I mean, Adam Chicks and Elijah Sam in the first half, dreadful. Actually, dreadful. I mean, it all throughout the team, there was some really poor individual performance. Never really got going, miles off it, giving the ball away. But credit to him, absolutely fantastic second half. Bit of a tactical switch. Went 4-1-2-3, so allowed Calvin Miller to become more central, went at Oxford and got the win. And of course, if someone was to say to me how bad some of the performances were in the first half, to then see the two players combine for an incredible goal, once in a lifetime goal you're ever likely to see. Just absolutely incredible, But it's gone worldwide. It's global. I mean, Hugh Grant's retweeted it to his followers. I mean, just a crazy story, just absolutely crazy, but beautiful as well. I mean, if you think how tough the year has been for football fans and Notts fans in particular, not being able to go to Meadow Lane, and that was probably one of the saddest parts is that they weren't in the stadium to see it. But to make up for it, it's gone viral across the internet. Colombia, Brazil, Europe, Japan, you name it, he's everywhere. And then for FIFA to tweet it to 14 million people, and deservedly so, by the way. I mean, it was just an astonishing goal. Just an astonishing goal. To do that with your back to goal, volley it, connection, beat the I mean, if Ronaldo or Messi had done it, that'd been it. I mean, you never heard the end of it. So now I'm firmly banging the drum to get Elijah Sam a Pushkas nomination, so he gets a free trip to Switzerland later on in the year.
And the thing is, he absolutely meant to do exactly what he did.
Yes, he did mean it. Yeah, he did mean it.
The way the goal was executed, you can see from his body shape and his technique and his follow through. What he did was exactly what he delivered.
Yes.
It wasn't like he'd meant to put it on the floor with the back heel. He meant to loop that ball up, drop it under the crossbar. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
really.
But it's just
for a guy who's 6'4", 6'5".
Do you know it defies the laws of physics, doesn't it? Really, when you think 6'5" to be able to get your leg that high, meet a cross that was whipped in fairly quick as well. By the way, it wasn't like it was he had time to. I mean, it just instant reaction. I mean, just remarkable. I mean, we've seen some incredible things at Notts in the last 7 years. I mean, that's number one. I mean, just for the reaction as well that it caused. 4 million views. Hugh Grant retweeting it. Jan Arge Fjørtoft, who's obviously now broadcasting in Norway or wherever it is, have a look at this. And for a player who'd had such, who like so many Notts players in the first half, such a bad game, and then produced like this incredible Jekyll and Hyde performance where they're excellent. I mean, it was just astonishing. Brilliant, really. And Neil was very funny today. So the first thing he said when he saw Elijah Sam this morning was, "Can I have your autograph?"
Yeah, the good banter in the dressing room.
To be fair, it was really good, and it's a fantastic story. I think it's brought a smile to everybody's face, and I'm pleased for Elijah Sam as well, because I think what perhaps people don't realise is, he's come from football in Bulgaria. I mean, the pandemic's been tough for all of us in terms of being able to see our families, especially in England, because of everything what people are going through. But I think the comfort of this lockdown is at least your family is only a few miles away. You can get in a car once lockdown's lifted, you can go and drive and go and see him. Elijah's family are in Belgium. They've not been able to come over and see him, and he's had to settle in a new league. He's been on his own. His wife's now come over. She came over in January, so at least he's got her now for some support. But it must have been so tough for him settling into a new league, new football club, and that pressure of having to try and deliver performances. So yeah, I'm really pleased for him. Lovely lad, very, very humble, and I think it's a beautiful story in that respect. And I'm really pleased because it'll be something that he'll remember whatever he goes on to achieve in his career. Yeah, it was something that he will never ever forget.
Yeah, and deserve it. And I think it's a very good point you raise about being without his family as well. It's a very good point. Throughout my time in pro football, the lads that are incredibly tall, of which clearly Eli is one. But you think Peter Crouch, yeah. In my early days at Leicester, they had Ian Ormondroyd, 6'5". And when you have players as tall as that, who kind of almost have a basketball physique rather than a football physique, there's no hiding place for them. You go on the pitch.
It's not like it can slink out of view, is it?
Everybody's eyes are magnetically zoom in on the 6'5", 6'6" bloke. You know, we can all remember. I can't remember the bloody team, but I remember the player. Which team had the 6 foot? So was it Solihull Moors had the 6'7", 6'8" bloke
this season?
Yeah, it was Solihull Moors. Yeah, you were probably on forest duty.
No, I remember him. He's the lone striker.
Yeah,
Can't remember his name though.
Yeah, but the point is you kind of always focus on the players of that size, and there's no hiding place for them. So if Peter Crouch miscontrols a ball, or Ian Ormondroyd miscontrols a ball, or Eli Sam miscontrols something, everyone remembers it, and all eyes are on them.
Yeah,
they're not anonymous. They're not anonymous. So I think Eli's always going to play when everybody watches him and sees whatever he gets up to. And in some respects, I'll be controversial here, in some respects, he almost has more to do when he gets the ball for the first goal than he does with that unbelievable single piece of skill for the second goal. Because if you remember when he's got the ball, there's about 3 players in front of him. He's about 15, 20 yards outside the box. There is no natural route on to goal if you replay it back when he gets that ball. And he does the twist, the shimmy. I noticed how he moves right to left. He's not one-footed in the sense he'll only drop there. He'll drop the shoulder this way, that way. And he's gone around 3 players, created an angle and scored. You know, and you think about the other one he got on the byline as well.
He meant that too.
Yeah, and well, that's he's starting to put together a little portfolio of goals now, because his goals ratio to starts is pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, you know? I mean, Neil was talking about the first goal today and said he enjoyed the first goal. And I think obviously they showed different qualities, didn't they? The second one was all about instinct. And I imagine if you were to feed in that cross 99 times, you know, there would only be one occasion where he got it right. He got it right on Saturday. Such a difficult manoeuvre to pull off. But the first goal, very, you know, comes in on the inside left. He's very good at shifting the ball. He manoeuvres the ball very well for someone so tall. And he's got good pace as well. But it was a good finish as well. And he's got that. Clearly, he's got something special in his locker. But like all these players who are like that, it's about consistency. It's about doing it on a weekly basis. You know, that's what separates Cal Roberts from a lot of players at Notts, because every week he delivers. He'll have perhaps, one bad game in 10. But whereas the others, and he does it consistently. Whereas, you know, the likes of Elijah and Ruben, you know, they've got it's striving for that consistency, because we know they're good players and we know they're blessed with quality. But the challenge for them moving forwards, if they're going to really push on and have great careers, is doing it, you know, 3 p.m. on a Saturday, then 7:45 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I don't think there's any doubt that they've got ability, because we've seen it. You know, Rodriguez against Dagenham, the goal he scored against Dagenham, Eli's goal on Saturday. I mean, what was the other one he scored as well when he got to the byline? Was it Altrincham? I can't try and remember if it was Altrincham or not. When he scored and got to the byline and produced a really cool finish. So he's definitely got something about him. Unpredictable as well, which I like. But again, you know, it's just about doing the simple things well as well, because I think in the first half on Saturday, there were times when he was playing with his back to goal in midfield, and some of his passing and his choice of passing, decision making, wasn't great. And, you know, he got caught playing the ball square a couple of times in risky, but he can learn that. And I'm sure Neil and the coaching staff at Meadow Lane will slowly but surely improve that side of his game. But he has got all the attributes: pace, power, strong, got a trick, decent dribbler. He's had a good education. Was at Standard Liège, wasn't he? As a kid, so everything's there. It's just about unlocking it on a weekly basis.
Yeah, here's a cheeky one from Paul Taylor, your beloved Liverpool. He says, ask Liverpool if they've got a spare centre half we can have.
Yeah, good. Well, yeah. Cheers for reminding me just how about. But again, that highlights the point about how crucial. People say, well, when we talk about players missing from team, and this is why I think what Notts has done is pretty good in the fact that Roberts has been out for so long, is they've managed to keep up there. Whereas you look at Liverpool, lost the two centre halves, dropped like a stone. The players in reserve just not quite up to speed. But you can take Kabak we can bring Kabak here if you want, and Phillips, one of those two.
Andrew Webb, a slight tangent, talking about the academy, who are doing particularly well in their.
Yes, top of the league, aren't they?
Yeah, two important games this week, says Andrew, against Grimsby and Doncaster, potential title deciders. Weird scenario in that the academy future hinges on the first team, though. And of course, the point here, I think that Andrew is alluding to, is that the funding for the academy, which is already reducing, would reduce further at the end of this season if Notts don't get back into the Football League. And clearly the club has a big decision then to make on what to do with its academy.
Yes, huge decision. I'm a bit... Listen, I think the whole... And I'm going to be quite controversial here. I think academies are great, but only if you can afford them. And it costs a lot of money to run. And do you know what? The rewards of developing your own players aren't actually that great, in fairness. If you think about the money that we got for Kiona Tete, because it's all geared up for the top sides to take your best young players that you're developing elsewhere who have come up through the Notts County Academies or wherever, Lincoln Academies, etc. It's all geared up for the top clubs to take them on the cheap. Dongda Hay was another one. So gone are the days where you could produce a academy player or a player who'd come through the youth team and sell him for £2 million. And them days are long gone. So I think it's going to be a tough decision, I think, for the owners to make, because I think they've got to match and they've got to ask themselves, is it worth it? Is the money? If the money isn't a problem, then yeah, go ahead and do it. But of course, the EFL funds it, don't it? So it's going to be a crucial decision, I think, for the owners to take. Tyrese Palmer obviously came on at the weekend, didn't he? I thought the game passed him by a little bit, but it was a tough first half for everybody. So I don't apportion any blame in his way. But yeah, that's a real big question the owners have got to answer at the end of the season, if the club obviously doesn't go up, what it does with the academy and whether it's worth that extra funding.
I think you raised some very valid points, and I think it's a topic I'm sure we'll be discussing at some point later in the season in more depth. I think the points you raise are correct. All I would say is, I think as a club, the owners have to set a strategy. There isn't a right way and there isn't a wrong way.
No, there isn't.
Some clubs are quite right not to have and invest a lot in academy. Other clubs will pump a lot into academy. Exeter, for once, still getting all the money coming in for the guy that they sold to Chelsea, and they've brought through a lot of young players. Now, Exeter, under a trust model, have made a decision to prioritise. Colchester have also done this with their ownership, with Robbie Cowling. They've prioritised a system whereby they almost bring a manager in that is given the template to say, we expect you to develop our young players and bring them into the first team. We run an academy to produce players, and our philosophy, our mantra, our approach is we are going to bring young players through within reason. Sometimes a club will say, right, we need experienced players to achieve promotion. I'm going to go with experience. I can remember many managers would say to me, Paul, I'm not interested if we've got the world's greatest 14-year-old in our academy.
Yeah.
Because I won't be here by the time he's 17. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you've always got that balance. And I think a lot of the time clubs get themselves into problems by seesawing from one extreme to the other. I think the club and the owners have to set out their strategy. We're going to do it this way, so the academy isn't going to be too important to us, in which case you don't need an academy. Or you might set it up another way where you're going to say, right, we want to produce 2 players every season. At the age of 16, we're going to take 2, with number of substitutes. There will be 2 of our academy guaranteed in an 18-man squad. And the 16-year-old will travel on the team bus. I've been at clubs where that's been done.
Yeah.
The 2 kids are taken down as a treat at 16, travel overnight, kick the ball around on the pitch an hour before kickoff. Yeah. Acclimatise them. But it's kind of which way, as a club, your owner wants to set it out.
Yeah.
What tends to happen sometimes is a manager comes in and he just wants experienced players, and another manager might come in and say, I want the kids. Yeah, well, so it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one. But I think it has to come from the top.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at what the owners have done, I mean, you could argue and say, okay, right, if we get rid of the academy and whatever money we save on the academy, we go and invest. I mean, like we've just said, it's all geared up for, if someone is 17, 18 in the club's academy and doing well, the likelihood is, somebody from a Liverpool or a Manchester United comes in and takes them for peanuts, right? What Notts have done is they took Callum Roberts from Blythe Spartans at the age of 22, whatever he is, 22, 23, spent a nominal fee, and already they've got themselves a profitable asset. Because if you look at, I can absolutely guarantee with what he's done on the pitch so far, he'll be knocking on the door of 500,750,000 in terms of a transfer fee. Now, are you going to get that same level of reward by developing a 17-year-old through your academy when, as we all know, the likes of Liverpool? I mean, if you look at Derby, for instance, they just sold Cade Gordon, described as the best 16-year-old in the country. I think the deal is worth £1 million. £1 million for however long he's been at Derby's academy. I mean, it's peanuts. If Cade Gordon goes on to be a world superstar, the only team that's done best out of that deal is Liverpool, not Derby County.
We could debate this for a long time, and there's quite a lot of points coming in. Kevin's been on, Leigh's been on, Paul's been on as well. I want to just mention Glenn Roeder. Of course, you've been quite young, despite that sort of greying hair. Glenn was
for you, that is.
Glenn was on loan at Notts in the about 1984, and he had a very successful loan spell with us, to the point where Notts were looking to sign him, but the owner at that point, Jack Dunnett, didn't have enough funds to finance his signing, so they issued an appeal for fans to raise money, and a lot of fans chipped in to either donate cash or pledge money, and it never got to a point where they raised enough and he had to go back. And when I was doing my book, I spoke to Jack Dunnett shortly before he passed away, and he revealed that although the fund had looked to have got very close, I think it's about 100,000 they were looking to raise, he said about 80% of all the pledges of the money had come from Notts fans who had addresses in West London. So they were all QPR fans trying to offload him. And that was kind of one of the reasons why Jack wasn't able to fund the signing. But we went to Stevenage, 3 years ago?
Yeah, he was there then, wasn't he? Yeah.
And Glenn was there then. I'd not met him before, and I was on the board then. And so I was chatting to him in the boardroom. Just before that, I'd left a book for him, one of my books as an ex-Notts player, left it on reception for him, said, could you give this to Glenn Roeder, your director of coaching? So I've gone up to see Glenn, And I said, "Oh, I've got a book for you. It'll be coming through." And so then in walks into the room Stevenage's manager, Darren Saul. Lovely guy.
Yes, yeah, he's now at Yeovil.
He goes, "Oh, Paul," he said, "Thank you so much." And I thought, hey, what's going on here? And he says, "Thank you so much for the book." He said, "It's lovely for you to think of me and give me this book. I shall read it." And I'm thinking, well, meant for you, it was meant for Glenn Roeder. And so Darren disappears. And Glenn, I looked at Glenn, I said, "Look, I'll get you another one. I'll post you another one." And he said, "I'll give you a story." So if you ever do another book, so I'll give you a story about Notts. He said, Jimmy Cyril. He said, on a Monday after a game, Jimmy would do like a coaching debrief. Although Larry Lloyd was the manager at the time, Jimmy would come and get all the players around a table. He said, and there'd be a Sabutio cloth, and there'd be some, and he'd get all his Sabutio players out, and he'd start talking tactics and formations, and he'd use the Sabutio players. He said he had black and white striped ones for Notts. He said, and if we'd been playing away, and they played in a horrible bottle green kit at that point. He said, if we played away and he was reviewing the game with the Sabutio players, he says he wouldn't have a black and white set. He said he'd have a dark green set of Sabutio players. He says he must have had about 30 sets of them, and he'd be moving the Sabutio. We'd all be huddled around this Sabutio cloth. Brilliant. While Jimmy's moving these players in the correct Notts colours around, saying what they should and shouldn't have done. And it was a lovely story. Lovely story. Brilliant. You know, and clearly our condolences to Glenn and all of his family. It's far too young. But yeah, it was a lovely, engaging story, and I sent him another copy of my book anyway. So, and I've no idea whether and even why Darren Saul would wish to read my book on Notts County. But anyway, he grabbed his copy. Right, now then, we've taken up a lot of your time tonight. Presumably you will be elsewhere tomorrow night as well.
Yes, Forest Luton tomorrow night, then Watford Forest at the weekend. So, but I think the run of midweek fixtures ends quite soon. So then I'll be back on, obviously last week I did 3 games last week, so felt like investing in one of those Max and Paddy style motorhomes to do some more. Is forever in my car at the moment. So, but I will be keeping my eye closely on events across the river. So hopefully, I think there's another game coming up soon that I'll be there. So, yeah, I'm just hoping they can just keep the run, keep going until so we can catch Torquay at the top of the table there.
Quick final questions from Paul Smith. He's raising the question about if records, what will happen if clubs, I think, for instance, Dover's record, because they're pretty adamant they ain't going to play. Yeah. I mean, our collective understanding, Leigh, to Paul, is that the record would just be expunged. It would be taken out.
It'd have to be, because it'd have to be.
You just have all, So in our case for Dover, that ain't bad for us. Because
it shakes the table. It shakes the table right up because obviously we lost to Dover, didn't we? So
and they haven't won many, have they? They haven't won many. Let's be honest.
So that would shake the top of the table right up.
Yeah, and a supplementary little cheeky one from Paul. I see Sam Osborne now at File with their season voided, has banged in 9 goals this season. Could we get him back on loan?
It's a fair question. I don't know. No, probably not. I don't think that'll happen either.
No, neither do I. But thank you to everyone tonight that sent us in questions. Lee Brearley, Chris Barker, Paul Taylor, Andrew Webb, Kevin J.S. Duska Jr., Lee Brearley, and Paul Smith. Thank you very much indeed for all your questions. Lee, as always, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. You're on the graveyard shift through to, 11 o'clock tonight, is it?
It's usually 11, but usually it goes on a bit longer than that, for me to get everything wrapped up. But hey, next week, I bought some headbands last week.
You got an Alice band like that?
I haven't put it on yet. I haven't dared to wear it out.
Put it on now. Let's have a look.
No, I can't.
No, I can't. Give you one like this.
No, it is. Yeah, look.
Come on.
Hang on. Look, see, it's so big. There we go. Look at that.
Yeah. It's Alan Smith. It's Alan
Del,
Smith.
Yeah, Al Smith. Del Piero, I'd like to say. So I haven't worn it out in public yet.
Dear me. Leigh, thank you very much indeed.